So, you've probably seen the headlines. A recent string of violence in the Twin Cities has really shaken the local Somali community, and it's sparking these urgent questions that go way beyond a simple news report. Okay, so let's get into it and try to understand what's really going on.
And this quote from CBS Minnesota, it just nails it. This isn't just about crime statistics, It's about a community feeling a real sense of crisis. And more importantly, they're ready for and searching for a way forward, a way to protect their kids. I mean, the events that kicked all of this off were just shocking. We're talking about gunfire at high school graduations. Those are supposed to be celebrations. And fatal shooting at a mall. Police have connected these incidents, and they're pointing to a pattern that involves young people from the Somali community.
And that really brings us to the core question, doesn't it? The one we're trying to unpack here. Because if we only look at the events themselves, we're just scratching the surface. To really get it, we have to dig deeper and ask, what are the roots of this? Where is this all coming from? And to answer that, our story actually has to start decades ago and thousands of miles away. See, to understand the challenges facing young people in Minneapolis today, you first have to understand the incredible journey their parents and grandparents took to get here.
So what happened in Somalia was just a catastrophic, decades-long collapse. It started with rebellion back in the late 70s, but it just spiraled into this brutal state-sponsored violence. And then, boom, by 1991, the entire government just fell apart. The state was gone. And that unleashed this massive, chaotic conflict that created a huge refugee crisis, forcing millions of families to literally flee for their lives.
And the scale of this tragedy, it's just staggering. An estimated 500,000 people killed since the war began. That is the kind of profound collective trauma that families carried with them as they searched for safety anywhere they could find it.
A lot of those families found their way to Minnesota. Specifically to this one neighborhood in Minneapolis that has its own long, rich history of welcoming immigrants, a place called Cedar Riverside, also known as the West Bank.
And what's fascinating is that long before it was a hub for the Somali community, Cedar Riverside had this nickname Snooze Boulevard. It was the heart of Scandinavian immigrant life. You'd have walked down the street and heard Swedish, Norwegian, and Danish everywhere you went.
You can really see how this neighborhood has just constantly transformed. It goes from that Scandinavian center to falling on hard times in the 50s, only to be totally reborn in the 60s and 70s as this hotspot for counterculture. They even called it the Haight-Ashbury of the Midwest. This history of constant change really set the stage for it to become the vibrant, diverse hub it is today.
So you go from Snooze Boulevard all the way to Little Mogadishu. Today, this neighborhood is the undeniable heart of the Somali diaspora in North America. It's a place of culture and community for sure, but it's also ground zero for the intense pressures of starting a new life. Right, because arriving in a new country is just the first step. For so many Somali refugees, settling in came with this really powerful and unique set of challenges that basically created a pressure cooker environment. And we actually have incredible insight into this from a major study by the National Institute of Justice. What it found was that Somali communities, even when you compare them to other refugee groups, face a very specific mix of vulnerabilities. And this environment can be especially difficult for young people. The study points to these 4 key pressures. First, there's direct anti-Somali discrimination, then being pushed to the social and economic edges of society. For the kids, there's this really tough struggle to figure out who they are, caught between 2 different cultures. And all of that can lead to this feeling of alienation, of not really belonging anywhere. And here is the absolute crucial point the researchers made. They drew a direct line. Gang involvement, they said, wasn't some random problem. It was a product of that feeling of marginalization, that feeling of being an outsider that is so tied to the refugee experience.
Now, this brings us to a really important point we need to clear up. For years, especially after 9/11, the focus from outsiders was almost always on radicalization. But the community itself, they've been trying to sound the alarm about a much more immediate and present danger.
That same study found this huge disconnect. While government officials might have been worried about extremism, people inside the community saw that as a distant, almost irrelevant issue. Their day-to-day reality, the problem they were really facing, was gang involvement. But here's the thing. To understand the violence today, you kind of have to throw out your old ideas of what a gang even is. The whole landscape of street conflict has totally changed. Think about old-school gangs, right? They had hierarchies, they fought over drug turf, they had a chain of command. Today's groups are better described as cliques. They're loose, they're fluid, they're not tied to a specific block. And the violence? It's usually not about business. It's personal. It gets sparked by some beef on social media and then explodes into the real world. And you can imagine, this makes things incredibly difficult for law enforcement. They're trying to police a type of violence that's mobile, that's unpredictable, and that can go from a simple online insult to a real-world shooting with terrifying speed. Sasha Cotton, from the Minneapolis Office of Violence Prevention, she describes this perfectly. She says allegiances are fluid, they're temporary. It's not about lifelong loyalty to a group anymore. It's more like the enemy of my enemy is my friend, at least for this week. So with all this complexity, what's the path forward? Well, the most powerful ideas for solutions are coming from within the community itself, and they're backed up by the very research we've been talking about. Listen to this powerful question from community leader Hassanin Mohammed. The call from inside the community isn't for more policing, it's for more prevention. It's for safe spaces like youth centers, where young people can find connection and mentorship before they get pulled into violence. And the National Institute of Justice report says the exact same thing. Its recommendations are crystal clear. 1, you have to address the root causes, like discrimination. 2, you have to create programs that build connection and a sense of belonging. And 3, and this is so important, you have to actually listen to the community and give them the help they're asking for, which is help with gang intervention. Which leaves us with a final, really challenging question to think about. The solutions have to start inside the community, no doubt. But the root causes? The discrimination, the alienation, those are bigger than any one community. And it forces all of us to ask what role society at large plays in creating an environment where every single young person, no matter their background, feels like they actually truly belong.